Good afternoon. As you said, I'm Raffaella Luglini. I'm Chief Sustainability Officer at Leonardo. I am delighted to give you my personal welcome today here at the EAC 2024, and also on behalf of Leonardo, who has promoted this global networking forum focused on IRIDE space program as a global catalyst in protecting people and planet. I'm honored to address such a distinguished space audience. We are here to share a common vision, a strong commitment, and an ambitious program, which sets the crucial goal of preserving our planet and build a more sustainable one for the next generations, thanks to Earth observation and space technologies. Over the last years and days, we have witnessed a significant increase in climate change events and natural disasters worldwide. We all still have in our eyes the vivid images of the rage of Hurricane Milton in Florida. Many nations are currently facing serious concerns related to mitigation, early warning, and protection of their territories and populations. It is a common challenge to tackle and a common goal to achieve for a sustainable future. Substantial progress has been made thanks to the development of new space and ground technologies aimed at ensuring a safe environment for future generations. These solutions are at the heart of Leonardo business. Their positive impact on protecting people and planet is definitely a fact. They represent a significant answer to climate change, but in order to be successful, a global action and a global commitment is mandatory. Governments, institutions, civil society, industry, each of these organizations plays a crucial role in building a future-proof environment. This is the reason why Leonardo promoted this event today, which focuses on IRIDE, a space program which will mark the near future of space and sustainability, thanks to the contribution of key stakeholders within the space domain at international level. We gather here at EAC 2024 not just as space dreamers or sustainability fans. Today we get together as industry and institutions to prove how space is the natural arena to commit, build, and deliver a multi-domain and multi-solution platform for climate action. Today we will explore how the joint effort of industry and space agencies can support governments by fully exploiting space technologies and capabilities, with the ultimate goal of contributing to the world's progress and security. This mission is at the heart of Leonardo purpose as well, a purpose which is actioned daily through the technologies and solutions developed by our group, leveraging its role as an international leader in global security, covering the entire value chain of space. IRIDE is a powerful example of how multi-stakeholder commitment in the space domain can truly be a catalyst for sustainable development. That is why today we are delighted to welcome the top representatives of institutions and industries contributing to IRIDE, which are fully committed to make this program a successful benchmark at global level. Furthermore, we are particularly excited today, as this year Italy is hosting EAC, and IRIDE represents a significant Italian contribution to a larger European program, complementing other Italian programs such as Cosmos, SkyMed, and Prisma, as well as European ones like Copernicus. So thank you for being with us today, and take this opportunity to join Leonardo GNF to explore together IRIDE, the constellation of constellations, in an open dialogue with our outstanding panelists. And now, let's kick off with a video. very powerful. And now I hand you over to Simonetta Di Pippo, Professor of Practice of Space Economy and Director of SEE Lab. Simonetta, the stage is yours.
So good afternoon, everyone, and really thank you to be here. I'll be the moderator today, and it's really a pleasure for me to be in this role with such distinguished speakers. First of all, allow me to introduce the speakers, and then I'll ask you to join me on stage. First, I would like to ask Simonetta Kelly, Director of the ESA Earth Observation Programs and Head of ESRIN. Please, Simonetta, join me. Very good. I didn't need to call, yeah. Two Simonettas, good. The second one, Massimo Comparini, Managing Director of Space Business Unit at Leonardo. Massimo, pleasure. Then Arti Olamaini, the Director of the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs. Arti. And then Teodoro Valente, ASI President, Chair of the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space for the period 2026-2027. Teodoro. So, first of all, I'm sure you have a lot of things to say, as usual, but I've been requested to be a sort of, let's say, strict moderator. And so I'll have to interrupt you, I mean, with a lot of kindness, but still, if you take, let's say, more time than expected. Allow me to go for first round, and my first question is for Simonetta. And the question is, you know, IRIDE can be seen as a game changer, and it is, by the way. So could you drive us through the benefits to protect people and the planet IRIDE could offer in addition to the European Copernicus program? Simonetta, you have the floor.
Thank you, Simonetta, the other Simonetta, for this question. I think we have a couple of slides going up, but in a nutshell, IRIDE is a national Italian project. It's been entrusted to ESA for the management and implementation, and ESA is implementing it with us in a joint project team. It's a program of about 1 billion euros. It's a program with challenging deadlines because of the European Commission deadlines in terms of implementation of the funding and the development of a constellation, rather optical hyperspectral constellation is the core of it. But if we go to the next slide, what's the objective? The objective, of course, to develop an end-to-end system. And that's why it's so important and also so relevant as a complementary national system to the existing European ones and Copernicus as well. It's a system where you develop satellites, but you also develop services, and you also organize a ground segment to support that. So that's really, in a nutshell, an end-to-end system that will be available as national capabilities, data sources, and also infrastructure for a European wider context. If we go to the next slide, we also see what type of services are going to be developed. And that was really the capital that came with this program from the Italian user requirements. In fact, we couldn't start from scratch, and we couldn't develop any constellation from scratch if we didn't have had already a very close collaboration among users in Italy in terms of collecting user requirements dedicated to 8 services, institutional services, and that's also what IRIDE is all about. It's about responding to clear user requirements which come from the institutional side. I'm sure Teodoro will mention about that more, but really to support environmental requirements, land, motion, everything that's related to air quality, defense, but also supporting agriculture agriculture and user requirements related to the protection of our heritage, which is very important in Italy. So that's part of the value added of this initiative, which is an initiative, I think, that puts Italy at the forefront in terms of acquiring capabilities, increasing its workforce in terms of industrial workforce, we'll talk about it later, but also really positioning Italy as a clear leading actor in the context of the wider European and international scenario in Earth observation.
I cannot agree more. So allow me to jump to Teodoro Valente. Teodoro, based on your double role as president of ASI and upcoming chair of COPUS, could you outline the role that Italy plays today and will play in Earth observation, also thanks to IRIDE, and also how space-based solution can foster sustainability? Teodoro.
Yes, good afternoon to everybody, and thank you for the question. Just to be clear, but you were right. I'm not actually the president of COPUS because there is a president. Yeah, no, you were right. You were right. Now, just to be clear for the audience, I will be, yeah, I will be an incoming president in 2026. So let me say this to answer to your question, which has two parts. For the first one, I think we can say without any doubt that Italy is a very important player for what it concerns the Earth observation activities, not because ASI says this, but because the international community says this. And just let's remember what we have done, what we are doing with our Cosmos SkyMed satellites, as well as with Prisma satellite, to which the IRIDE constellation, which is a constellation of a constellation, will be added in pipeline in order to have more higher potential for the purposes that we have. And that's for sure, according to also what Simonetta showed very rapidly in the public services, that the IRIDE solution, the IRIDE constellation, will have an important role in long-term sustainability, because it is designed to be as a public infrastructure, even though it will have a part of commercial services to help to achieve sustainability goals on Earth. Frequent monitoring of our national territory, and so it is really a sort of game changer supporting the sustainable development goals, particularly in the area of disaster prevention related to climate change. So this is one important thing, and we also have decided that we will implement when the constellation will be ready and fully operating to adopt some data sharing with emerging countries, for example. One of these will be perhaps the Kenya, through our relationship with the Kenya Space Agency. So giving a contribution not only on the Italian side, but also in the international side. And this is important because it's in some way, conceptually speaking, not like technical speaking, related also to my ideas for what it concerns the activities of next COPUS, starting from 26, because I think that we should work in order to advocate for, I would say, a broader and more inclusive vision of sustainability. We need to combat, obviously, and to define solution for the climate change, that's obvious, but we need also to address the socio-economical dimensions of these issues, which are linked to sustainable development. And the areas are those which have been mentioned by Simonetta, so food security, energy management, biodiversity protection, all in addition to climate change and disaster monitoring and hopefully preventing. But I want also to stress another point, that in this case, we are talking about sustainability of our planet, that is sustainability on Earth. But when we talk about sustainability, we need also to take into account sustainability on space, in space, which is another very important issue, which cannot be divided by sustainability, generally speaking. And so talking about the space environment, and also this one, I think, should be a relevant topic to be discussed inside Corpus. Here we do have some expertises in Italy as Italian Space Agency. Let me recall, for example, the measures, the programs that we have actually running under the National Recovery Resiliency Plan, which is the so-called in-orbit economy. The in-orbit economy is divided into two lines. One is in-orbit servicing, which is a contribution fundamental for sustainability in space, as well as the fly-eye measurements, hopefully, and finally, which is more related to SSA, but it can give a contribution to detection of debris and so sustainability in space. Then we have the other topic, which is important anyway, which is related. We discussed it also yesterday on in situ resources utilization, which affect sustainability in space and from space towards our Earth. So I think IRIDE will give a very important contribution, and perhaps later on we will do some more technical detail. But when we talk about sustainability, we need to take into account both environmental aspect as well as socio-economical challenges.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your very comprehensive description. Now let me move to Arti, the Director of the Office for Outer Space Affairs. Arti, how do you think the solutions that could be potentially offered by IRIDE can support the achievement, expected achievement of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and if I may, also the renewed, let's say, commitments taken by member states recently at the Summit of the Future? Please.
Thank you, Simonetta. And I don't know how many of you know, but during her time at UNUSA, Simonetta presided over the creation of the Space 2030 Agenda, which was looking at how space could contribute to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, something which I have inherited and which next year there will be a midterm review of. We really want to see how are we doing, how are member states doing on the achievement of each of these goals, knowing that space data and services have such an important role to play to so many of the goals. So the question of how IRIDE will contribute to this is really a no-brainer. We know the importance of Earth observation data. We know that it is effectively actionable intelligence for the member states who have access to it. And whether we see it being used for meteorology or climate change, all the way to think about the Maldives, which has an average elevation of just 1 meter above sea level, the lowest elevation of all the countries everywhere, the first island state which will be wiped out when the sea level rises. We can think about this, we can think about food security and agriculture, oceans monitoring, deforestation, IUU fishing, so many, the list is endless. But what interests me is the differentiator, the delta difference that IRIDE will make over systems which are out there already. The overwhelming feedback that we have from member states is, number one, oh, it's great, all these stories about what Earth observation data can do, but we can't afford it. We don't have access to it. Yeah, so the affordability, the accessibility question. And secondly, well, great, you give us data, but so many of us, we don't know how to use it. So the capacity building question, how are we going to train and so on? And this is a very important role for the office. We're the gateway between space solutions on the one hand and the needs of member states on the other. And we are told repeatedly that even though member states may work with UNDP, World Health Organization, FAO, all of the UN agencies that everybody has heard about when they haven't heard about UNUSA, they tell us that each one of those other agencies has their own mission and their own priority. None none of them has a mission to give them space data and to teach them how to use it. It's only UNUSA that does that through our SPIDER program, Space-Based Information for Disaster and Emergency Response. But member states are telling us they need more high-resolution data. A lot of member states say there's so much data available for free. Anybody can access it, whether it's Landsat, whether it's Copernicus. Of course, this is very useful data, but there's a limited amount of things that you can do with that. And especially local actions, they require higher resolution data. Problem, it's either commercial, which means it's expensive, or it's military, which means it's not accessible. So I have high hopes for our collaboration with Italy, but maybe I'll save that answer for the second round of questions. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Now let me switch to Massimo, with a question which may sound a basic one, but I'm sure you will make a lot out of it. So as a representative of Italian industry and specifically of Leonardo, which is the role played by industry and Leonardo by developing IRIDE solutions and services?
You're right, Simonetta. It may appear a basic question, but in reality I can talk half an hour. So I will divide by 10 and keep a stick on the 3 minutes. But first of all, let me start with something which is apparently disconnected, but I think that to debate about the impact of a system like IRIDE at IAC is particularly important, because IAC is also a place where we discuss a lot about exploration, human in the outer space, and every astronaut that saw the Earth from the station always gave the same message: amazing beauty and amazing fragility. And of course, systems like IRIDE contribute to the sustainability, contribute, let's say, to make this planet sustainable, but also to protect this planet, which is, I think, one of the key messages of flagship program like Copernicus. So in this respect, I frame my response, Simonetta, on the fact that we have a lot of technologies flying in our Earth observation systems. And IRIDE, if I could say, it's a good example of the impact that Teodoro described just a few seconds ago about what Italy can bring in a system like that. Why? Because you cannot imagine a constellation of constellations if you don't have a long-standing heritage on how to build a first constellation, first. Second, and then I will take for a couple of minutes this point. I will be back in a couple of minutes. But you cannot imagine the impact if you are not going to measure the Earth or sensing the Earth with different angles, which means the multi-mission. So here we have optical sensing, radar sensing, multi-hyperspectral sensing, and all of that combined to have the information that we need for the different SDGs, for the different user communities. So a second element, how the impact of IRIDE. And the third one, you mentioned the number of companies that are involved. And in this respect, I have in mind two valuable principles. Why Italy is having this big impact in this. One, it's not just a single company, big enough. It's really a chain of different companies. And this is, I think, it's a big value of the ecosystem. And the second is not just to conceive an advanced sensor without keeping in mind what is the ground architecture to manage this complexity and what is the service in the downstream. And so if you ask it, apparently a basic question, or say something which is very basic but is not at all, today we cannot imagine a new sensor or new systems without having in mind what is at the end, so the final users. It may appear very simple, but it's not. It's not, because for many, many years, and it was right at that time, we went through a technology push, and you know very well, Simonetta. So how to push the technologies to make reliable our space systems. And there was a kind of phase fundamental for the space community and the space industry. Today, if we want to have an impact of a new system, at the same time we imagine new technologies, we need to imagine, okay, what's the difference at the very end, at the downstream, this new technology will bring, and how we combine different technologies to have this impact more and more evident. So I think those are elements where IRIDE is really showing a powerful ecosystem today that we have in Italy, which is, I discussed many times with Simonetta, is also a richness for all Europe. I had in mind that, for instance, Italy is leading two important missions of the Copernicus expansion. One is Roselle, an L-band radar for the monitoring of the land, and the other is CIMR, no, CIMR. CO2M is on the other side. No, no, yes, because I'm still president of TAS, so CO2M. No, I have in mind the CIMR with TAS Italian, OHB Italy, which is to monitor the pole, the ice caps, which is fundamental to understand what is the status of the health of the Earth. So, an example how to complement constellations, large infrastructures, to have all the base of data to have really a digital twin of the Earth, which is fundamental to address the SDG, is fundamental to address global challenges, and is fundamental also to address local challenges in the monitor of our territory, of our security. So I think IRIDE, it's a kind of good panorama of why we can give this impact from Italy to Europe, and not only to Europe.
Not only to Europe, yeah. Absolutely. So this brings me to Simonetta again. So considering, as has been said several times, that IRIDE is a user-driven program, so can you tell us a little bit about the key players, in your opinion, and also how this will impact on the space ecosystem? So how IRIDE can be, let's say, can skyrocket certain solutions for the institutional market.
Thank you, Simonetta. We said in the beginning, and we've heard it even more supported by ASI and UN and even industry, the fact that IRIDE is not just a system of systems, but is very strongly based on user requirements. Today, the work which is done through the IRIDE project team, the integrated project team ISA-ASI, has already collected more than 200 users in the aggregation of all what is planned in terms of service development. In Italy, ISPRA is the main focal point, is the one that has today the role of actually organizing those user services and those services around the IRIDE. And I think ISPRA is a very good, I would say, user, because ISPRA has been not just very active in the last decades in terms of collecting, understanding, organizing user requirements on the environmental side, so environmental degradation, everything that's related to many of those application areas, but has also been having a very key role in terms of active participation to relevant European projects, because ISPRA has been involved in relevant European projects. I mean, we've been working with ISPRA in the context of GEO, we've been working with ISPRA in Italy, not GRC, by the way, ISPRA, in the context of also European projects. So I think what is very important here is the consolidation of those user requirements, the demonstration of precursor services, and that's also what is being done. And there I think the synergy between a national program like IRIDE and the European programs, that the ones we are running in ESA, is very important. We have a program in ESA called Future.io. We have a program where we developed R&D demonstration of the value of using Earth observation data to support specific user requirements and application. And there I think of agriculture, crop monitoring, environmental degradation, but also subsidence or support to disaster management. And those demonstration products, which sometimes are really developed in another program called Future.io, PRIO and ESA program can be extremely useful in terms of precursor demonstration of what IRIDE will do to support the users at national but also European, and we said here, which is very important, international level, because we should not forget that the value of Earth observation, the value of the collaboration on sustainability should be a worldwide one, and that's why we're presenting this at IAC today.
Thank you so much. So this brings me back to Massimo, mentioning the Leonardo excellences in a way. So for sure, there is quite a strong, let's say, positioning of Leonardo in terms of, the value chain and multi-domain and multi-services perspectives. We've been discussing this, at length, let's put it like that. So if you could summarize a little bit the Leonardo perspective from this standpoint, in particular on IRIDE, but in general also, would be great.
Okay, let's start. IRIDE is an end-to-end system. So we have a space segment, a ground segment, and of course the marketplace for the downstream. And of course we are present all over the value chain through the pieces of our industrial presence in the market, which is the Space Alliance, Thales Alenia Space, Telespazio, IGEOS, that I remember is the joint venture between Telespazio and the Italian Space Agency focused on geospatial. And of course, all our capability and advanced sensors like hyperspectral optical telescope that we have in Leonardo itself. Okay, so this is a status that if we see IRIDE, as we said before, is giving the impact that has been described, but is also marking a potential for the future which is quite remarkable. Why I say that? I say that because if you take, for instance, the radar segment, it would be composed by 12 satellites of a class of about 200 kilos. So it's really a class which has been conceived for the constellation. A class of satellite that has been conceived to a high power computing on board and to connect the single node with the inter-satellite link. So it's again technologies bringing advanced architecture for very advanced services. Ground, Telespazio is designing a completely new generation of digital ground. So ground, which is not only there to operate the satellites, but is also there to prepare the data exploitation of huge amount of data. So we can tell digital ground, ground analytics, but this is the principle. And last but not least, of course, Simonetta mentioned the cluster of 8 services, which is of course find in the downstream part, again in the service part in IGEOS, the terminal, together with the kind of constellation of other enterprises that are part of the marketplace. So this is the reality today and what IRIDE has been conceived for. And then I had a specific point, which is what we are working in the last few months to shape the strategy Leonardo behind the legacy of a space infrastructure. At the end here, we are talking about how to derive information from data. So we really think that the convergence between the digital technologies and space technologies is fundamental for that. So we imagine to inject AI, artificial intelligence, high-power computing to process this huge amount of data and derive the information and give the information through digital platforms in a protected environment. And this is another step that we are going to add, which is also one of the key visions that we are shaping for the Leonardo Space Division, starting from the capability to conceive from technology to service complex systems like IRIDE.
Thank you so much. I believe it's quite a good strategic view of what is happening and is going to happen in the near future. But let me move to Teodoro again. And Teodoro, it's a little bit more a political question, but how you feel that the Italy and the Italian leadership can contribute to, let's say, cooperation at international level, supporting the development of space-based solutions, for example, for climate change mitigation and adaptation, to protect people and the planet?
Well, I think that Italy can play a key role in international cooperation as general statement, based on the long-standing experience that we have to foster international cooperation. Yeah. But to the focus of your question, we have expertise to do it, also to develop space-based solutions for climate change, having a solid background in space technology, Earth observation, and environmental monitoring. And if I can, since the topic of this GNF is IRIDE, IRIDE is going to give a very important contribution to this approach, and is a prime example. 68 satellites, when the constellation will be finished, which I think will deeply modify our approach to monitoring of the Earth. Why? Because we are talking about a very rapid revisiting time, which enables to get frequent data. Then data must be elaborated. I agree with Massimo, and we have also other tools in order to get the right information. But we can get frequent data acquisition from specific areas. And so this means that we can provide timely information to decision makers to help to save life, for example, to protect properties, for example, to preserve the environment, for example. So IRIDE goes beyond the immediate disaster response. And the international cooperation is important because with this constellation, we can get early warning signs of potential hazard. So putting our decision makers in the condition to take informed decision promptly. And if we, as we would like to do, as we will do in the long term, will share this data also with the emerging countries where it is possible, this will be a real contribution worldwide for the purpose of sustainability of our planet, and also will be a sort of, let's say, push in order to put the emerging nations in a situation where they are not today. And this means that together with data, we need to put our efforts, and we are putting in some countries of the emerging areas for training decision makers, for capacity buildings, initiatives. And so I think we need to, let me say, to embrace a sort of new perspective on the power of the Earth observation. Because instead of just reacting to the emergency, for example, the climate change, we need to focus, and we must focus on prevention and targeted solution. And this is a very powerful tool for international collaboration, and I think that IRIDE is designed also for this and will give a very high valuable contribution in this area.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And on the same vein, I will ask Arti, from your perspective, what can be the positive impacts that IRIDE can provide on a global scale, which is, an extension of what Teodoro just mentioned?
First of all, I think we should recognize that there's a lot of money that goes into new Earth observation satellites, dedicated ones for sea water, measurements and so on. So many different investments that are going in. This is a great example of a targeted use of public funds for something, for filling a gap. And I think that should be recognized. For me, what do we do with such an asset? It's a question of organization, optimization, and efficiency. We know Earth observation data is very valuable. What we maybe don't realize is how we will, as the number of natural disasters increases, man-made disasters increases, as the impact and the effect of climate change increases, and the pace of change of our environment increases, we will need more data going forward, and we will need more precise data, more actionable data. So it's great that IRIDE has so many different aspects, from optical radar to the multiple frequency ranges, from infrared to panchromatic, multispectral, hyperspectral, all of these things, right? But how do we make this accessible and to the developing world who needs it most? How do we do that? That's where the point about international cooperation comes in. That's where the importance that Italy attaches to working with developing nations on an equal footing in the spirit of the Mattei Plan is so important. Now, what is UNUSA doing? On our side, we're trying to get organized. We see that within the UN system, there's more than 25 different parts of the UN who are all individually buying space data. Is completely inefficient. It's an inefficient use of public funds. Some of them, they look to us, whether it's the Office of Drugs and Crime, whether it's the International Atomic Energy Agency, they look at us and they say, you're the space guys. Why aren't you aggregating this demand and procuring that data for the UN system? Our motivator is not the UN system. That is a good reason. Our motivator is the SDGs and the developing countries. And here we hope that when it comes to acquiring data, we are trying to become the central hub for the procurement of satellite data for the UN system and for developing nations. The first thing is data acquisition. How do we do it? We have some agreements in place with commercial entities, Airbus, Maxar. We're exploring those further, but we really want to partner with countries who do have systems like IRIDE and see if they would be willing to also share that data with us. We're having a conversation about the platform. As Massimo said, with so much more data coming online, we need the high power computing, we need the AI. The UN does not intend to develop its own platform. That would be unaffordable and duplicative. But we're in a conversation with actors who do have these platforms, who are willing to make them available to the United Nations. And we hope that Italy will be an important provider also of that data. We haven't really had that conversation yet, have we? But I hope we will.
Okay, if I can, Simonetta, just to give it to you a very short example, because also the other speakers need times. Let's talk about African countries. So, you know, we have a very solid relationship with Kenya. We are realizing together with Kenya Space Agency in Kenya a regional center for Earth observation with 2 nodes. One node will be in Malindi, where is our base, and another one will be in Nairobi. And we have already agreed to let them available data coming from Cosmos, SkyMed, obviously the data which can be discovered, let's say, that coming from Prisma, and in future, when available, coming from IRIDE. And we are engaging discussion with the African Space Agency, which is not still really operative, as you know, but we are starting to discuss with them, since this is, as Arti said, public funding. But please do not forget that public funding is for the beginning. Then we need to maintain the constellation, and so also a sort of commercial services is needed. Otherwise, it will become very, very difficult.
And if I can just add one thing.
Yeah, sure.
Some years ago, I think it's more than 10 years ago, ESA did a really valuable study to look at what is the multiplier effect of every euro that is invested into satellite systems. And I think back then, more than 10 years ago, it was 27 times the value of every euro that was invested. I don't know if ESA has updated that study, but these are really important factors, especially when we think about the space economy, which is an area of your expertise, Simonetta.
Yes, we do have regular updates of those studies. Those are very useful in terms of understanding the value for money, which is not just purely an economic value, but it's also a value really in terms of societal benefits and all what we're talking here at IAC, sustainability and goals collective to fight climate change, desertification, degradation of environment, and all of that. I think if you talk economics, first of all, I like to say there's going to be a very strong synergy between what Teodoro was mentioning in terms of the Mattei plans, the collaboration with the UN, and the bilateral relations that Italy has with many partners here present at IEC. And what we are doing at ESA, we're also delegated funds from DG IMPA to work in Africa, and we're really working with plans of synergetic activities between what Italy is planning to do, also with the contribution from IRIDE, but not only, also for the contribution from the European satellites that we have available, and what we are doing in terms of work that we do in Latin America. We are developing a Copernicus hub for the Latin American region. We're doing a similar thing in the Philippines. So there's a lot of potential, I would say, to be exploited in terms of having the best synergy between IRIDE and other initiatives worldwide, also with ESA. Economic benefits, I'd like to mention something before we close. I think we made quite an assessment, a midterm assessment that we shared with the Italian authorities about the value for money of IRIDE, and this is really relevant in terms not just of number of contracts signed, over 30, number of companies involved. Massimo just mentioned really a new sector of SMEs and value-added sector which is involved now in Italy in terms of 73 companies today working on IRIDE, so also an economic value. And in terms of workforce, there's about 400 estimated people workforce increase. There is also very strong collaboration with the academic world. Thank you to the IRIDE project in Italy and worldwide. And I think these are all soft and economic direct benefits of this program overall that I like to highlight here.
Do you want to say something?
Just a couple of comments. One, Teodoro mentioned about how a system like IRIDE can manage the full cycle of risk, for instance, of our emergency management. And I think it's a good example of quite advanced technology in the downstream. Why I said that? Because in an emergency, we were used for many, many years to manage the event after that it happened. Yeah, right. You may say, okay, of course it's normal. But at the end, if we combine the capability to observe the Earth with the frequency that a constellation like IRIDE enable, first. If we combine things like Destiny, the digital twins, so to have a digital twin, a model of what is the situation. And if you combine data, also weather nowcasting and forecasting, of course I have in mind that the last baby has a jewel coming also from our place in Campion, Nerviano, I mean the methods of third generation. So if we combine all of that in advanced modeling, we can manage the risk also ex ante, which is extremely important also to address issues, global issues that you mentioned, Harti. So I think it's an example of how from the infrastructures we can enable things that a few years ago we cannot imagine, and how in a little bit more strict terms, AI, cloud, all the digital technologies may help to make that possible. And I think this is important also because it's an area where we can open a lot of innovation, a lot to, once the investment is done, imagine how powerful is the investment that you can make on digital technologies with the startups. And the last comment is that I frequently have the question, okay, but why at the end Italy is leading space domain in exploration, observation? And I had in mind, back to the recovery plan, and back to something which is, it is here in one of the stand, which is Space It Up. It's a kind of advanced partnership between research centers, academia, industry, managed by Italian Space Agency and led by the Politecnico Turin. I remember when we started to sketch down the recovery plan, it was called at that time by the Minister of Research, because we tried to design, there was also 3 former Ministers of Research, and a 4th one, which was not minister, but they think that I could bring good idea. Research from industry. So how we can connect research to the industry. And I think this is a domain where we are really showing that an ecosystem may work and may work very well. And I think this is one, not the secret, but one of the recipes why Italy is leading space.
Thank you so much. We have just few more minutes, and I got some questions from the audience. And the most popular one is the following. So then who wants to reply? More than welcome. And the question is, what expectation exists about the long-term sustainability of IRIDE post-2026? So it's a bit political, and I don't know if you, but you can probably try.
If you put a political question, you will receive a political answer. We are working on that. We are working on that with our authorities.
May I give an industrial answer, Teodoro?
Sure.
You know, it must be sustainable because as a part of the recovery plan, we are building a new factory in Italy, co-funded by the Italian Space Agency.
But we are working on that, Massimo. You know.
Smart Space Factory that will produce, has the capability to produce 2 satellites per week of the class of IRIDE. So we need to export a lot of systems after the success of IRIDE to fulfill the factory.
And before we have the challenge of the post-26, we at ESA, together with us, we have the challenge of 26, which is, I tell you, not a minor one, all together with industry, with the project team. I have the project leader here. So we plan to launch first constellation early 25, then the next one also from Thales next year. And I think that's really the main first challenge ahead, is to make sure the system is up and flying by 26.
If I can contribute a diplomatic answer to complement the political and the industrial one.
The floor to Teodoro.
Working in the United Nations.
Yeah.
That's the diplomatic, yeah.
The demand is not going to stop. It is going to stay up. And we need the global south to hold the global north accountable to assume their responsibility and support their neighbors in the global south. That in itself is an imperative for projects like this to continue long term.
Absolutely. Teodoro.
Yeah, okay, just to give a serious answer. You know, no. With respect to my first one, with respect to my first one, not to yours. You know, from 2026, the owner of the asset will be the Italian Space Agency. So we are seriously working on the long-term sustainability with our national authorities. Some measures are already foreseen in the triennial plan, action plan of the Italian Space Agency, not yet published. Be confident.
So I believe this, I mean, thank you very much, because you gave quite a very, I'd say, comprehensive answer from different standpoints. And just I wanted to mention before I go to a second question, last question, because then we don't have time. Well, I made the exercise to visit the online index, which is hosted by the Office for Outer Space Affairs. And Italy launched, or at least in the online index, you find a little bit more than 80 satellites. Half of them registered, because there are a lot of CubeSats and other satellites not registered. Which means that only with IRIDE, phase 1, let's say, we are giving quite a huge boost to the number of satellites launched by Italy just in one shot. So it's just an element for further elaboration. So I don't want to go deep on that, but just to say that in any case, for the ones who want to know how many satellites are in orbit, you go on the online index of the Office for Outer Space Affairs and you find everything. So the second and last question from the audience is the following. What will be the license of the IRIDE data? Is it open data license? Is the data specifications already considering stack and STAPI? Here we go in a very, precise technical things, specs for being able to support interoperability. Who is going to answer?
Well, again, seriously speaking, we are working on that. We have not yet launched any satellite of IRIDE, so let's give to us the time to work properly.
Absolutely.
You will get some surprise.
Okay. Isa?
No, the data policy is really the remit, as it's a national program of Italy, so we are supporting the process as an advisor, but not in the front line on the data policy preparation, which is really the responsibility of Italy, so I wouldn't like to comment further on that.
As Teodoro said before, I think that we need to find the right balance between the availability of those data for bilateral, multilateral cooperation, and also how to make from the variable data an asset to keep the sustainability of the system. So I think that this is, again, a practice that it's well established. We learn how to do since about 20 years. So I hope that at the institutional level, we will be inspired by the best practice that we follow in the past.
So we have just 1 minute, and all the other questions are either not so popular or already part of the answers. So I have to say that this was a very interesting panel, as it was following expectations. And it's always a pleasure to be together with friends in discussing these topics. Thank you very much to all of you who attended, up to the end, this very interesting GNF. Thank you very much to Raffaella Luglini for what she did in preparing. Believe me, it's been a very, very good preparation, very detailed. We have been involved, all of us, in this preparation. Again, thank you very much and see you soon. Bye.